kind of like a slob, but I haven't gone to work in a week because of the snow, so I don't really feel like putting in effort. Also, my hair looks incredible. Anyway, hi, it's Jessi. Welcome to another turning where I sometimes talk about books. Let me shift this way for once. You can see all my pretty books. I rearranged my bookshelves recently. Anyway, this is my reading 2025 favorites vlog. I'm doing things a little bit differently. I always do. So I have two lists that I'm working off of here. One is YouTube. I only did YouTubers that I actually follow. While sometimes it is fun to watch a million videos and try to see if there's somebody new to follow, I just wasn't feeling that this year. And the other one is I have signed up for Books and Lala's membership, and she does a big members favorites of the year. So I used that list a little bit. But I won't be sharing any of that information with you because that feels weird. So here's the plan. This is going to be this video stops when I get a 5-star, but kind of situation where I will have some categories or grouping. So the first one is that I wanted to go with the two that people have the most in common with me. So for Books and Lala's list, the person that had the most favorites in common with me, out of the 15, I think we had like 6 or 7 in common. Their number one was Local Heavens by K.M. Fajardo? I'll have to look that up. This I don't actually know anything about. I have, since I got this book and decided to read it, found out that it's a Great Gatsby retelling, which has me wary. And it's sci-fi, and this is the shiniest cover I have ever seen in my entire life. And the other one is Katie Coulson and I had the most in common. About half of the books on her list were books that I had loved. And Interior Chinatown was the favorite of her by Charles Yu. So this one's on the list. But, and I was planning on starting with those, but a hold came in at the library. Now, this is not actually the number one book from my YouTube followers, following. This ended up actually the second most. But if I include the Will of the Many ones, maybe that evens up. But this hold came in from the library, so I will be starting with The Strength of the Few because I need to read this and get it back to the library for everybody else that wants to read it. And I'll be starting with this. I read The Will of the Many last year, I think from the same video, and was gagged. I was not expecting to like it. It sounded very not in my alley. It's a Roman kind of inspired fantasy world in which magic is a pyramid scheme. And we follow Vis, who is somebody kind of hiding his identity, living in an orphanage. He gets adopted by somebody pretty high up in the hierarchy who tells him, you got to go to school and investigate something for me. And I was like expecting it to be completely dude bro. And there are problems. I don't love the depiction of women. There are very specific in-world world building reasons for the role of women to an extent, but also I'm always kind of a little wary when authors make that choice. But I do think Islington, I have not figured it out. Everybody says it differently. Apparently the audiobook narrator himself says his name differently in different ones. I don't know because I'm not going to subscribe to Audible. But yeah, so when The Strength of the Few picks up, I've heard basically immediately after where The Will of the Many left off. I have just watched, I'll leave it linked below. I can't remember the YouTuber's name who did a beautiful recap of The Will of the Many to prep me for this. So this will be first. I don't know how much of my thoughts I'm going to give you on this. And whether or not one of these is a 5-star, I'm going to be reading all 3 of these before this ends. If I don't get a 5-star in one of these 3, I have a larger list to pull from. Hope you enjoy. I'm not terribly far yet. I'm about 10%, which is normally earlier than I would like to update, but also I'm not going to be able to say much about this because it's a sequel anyway, so I figured there's really no harm in updating early and then just saving my thoughts for the end. Now, The Will of the Many was not a 5-star for me, but it was pretty close, but mostly because of the ending. One of the things, this is going to be like my only negative for right now, one of the things I vaguely remember was just not loving women, the way women were depicted in the book, but I couldn't think of anything specific. And then I kind of got to a line in here which kind of made it click for me. There's a line, it doesn't really matter the context, it's just this and somebody else is in a house with a couple, a married couple and their kids. It says, the couple whose hospitality we're enjoying, a weathered man of about 40 and a lean blonde-haired woman, stop beaming at us, blah, 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 blah. And that kind of gets to the heart of it. Like, why is the man described in a way that makes him sound old, including an age, but the woman is described with her hair color? And in a way that, like, distinctly juxtaposes it to make her seem younger. I don't know, maybe it's in my head, but there is something weird in the depiction of women. That said, this picks up basically where book one left off, which, if you've read it, you know where it left off. If you haven't read it, I'm not going to tell you. And it is immediate. There is some, like, weird, interesting things going on that we immediately get some, like, info dumping about, hey, here's what's really happening, which was really fun. And I'm really doubly glad I did that, watched the recap beforehand, because, yeah, there's certain details I just would not have remembered otherwise. That said, after that initial, like, exciting, ooh, this is where we're at, it's slowed down a lot. I think this is going to be a slow builder, and I do think this is going to have some middle book syndrome where it's not a lot happening and it's just setting up for the finale, which I'm fine with. I actually don't mind middle books, but I do have a feeling this is going to be slow. Like I said, this wasn't actually the number one from YouTube. It was the number two, and it was, I would have to double check my list from last year, but I do think it's fewer than had The Will of the Many, especially if you include people that had The Will of the Many this year. So a lot of people read it, loved it last year and the year before, honestly. And just as many read it this year. It was like one of the top probably 10, 15 books that I had was still The Will of the Many. This had fewer, although it came out very close to the end of the year, so your mileage may vary on that. I don't know. I feel like I'm going into this expecting it to be worse, and that's got me wary. Anyway, I do want to clarify real quick, just for the purposes of this. When I say 5 stars, I don't necessarily actually expect a 5-star. The way I rate books is kind of harsh. I'm looking for a 4.5, 4.75, or 5. Because if I were to, like, round up to full stars, like if I were rating on Goodreads still and had to do full stars, if it's a 4.5 or up, it'd probably be a 5-star, even if on Storygraph it isn't quite. But I will probably not update you until I finish this, which means it'll probably be a couple days. Although it is the weekend, and with the weather continuing to be what it is, I don't know that I'm going to go out and do much. So I might finish this sooner. I did read all of Monte Cristo in like 4 days because of the snow days. So we shall see. So, what if I DNF the strength of the few? I mean, no, I'm not going to do it. I really have been contemplating it, though. I'm nearly 300 pages in. I finished part 1. I'm not really loving it. So here's the thing, and I'm trying to talk about this as vaguely and with as few spoilers as possible. This book has 3 perspectives instead of just 1. In the first book, there was only 1 perspective. In this one, there are 3. And I really think James Islington, whatever, is incredibly bad at balancing those. Not that, like, we're spending too long with one character or not enough time with another character. It is more just when he switches between them, it's not great. One thing is that at the beginning, like I said, we got a bunch of answers at the beginning, but only one of those perspectives got that answer. And it's really frustrating to me waiting for the other characters to catch up. And normally that doesn't bother me. Normally I'm pretty good at separating the amount of information different characters have. But in this one, for some reasons that make sense if you know what's in the book, but it's just really getting to me, not having them all be on the same page. The other thing is that he will end a chapter. He'll do 2 or 3 chapters from a perspective, sometimes 1 and sometimes a little more, but he'll end a chapter with like this big moment, this like dun-dun cliffhanger-esque moment. You know, like to give an example without spoilers is like, it might be like, that night we went to bed, I was feeling good, and then the next morning he came, you know, something like that. And then we go to the other perspectives, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to get back to that one. by the time you get back to that one, you kind of stop caring. But also, he won't pick up at that moment you were at. He will instead either jump forward in time and then reference back to that moment to be like, and this is what happened. Or he will back up. So like in the example that I said, you know, we start the next morning and that guy doesn't show up till the evening. So it's like you're sitting there like, oh my God, something dramatic just happened. But no, it didn't. Or somebody will pass out at the end of a section, and the next time you wake up, or you get to their perspective, they have woken up it's days after they woke up, and it's not this like big, like, ooh, what happened? So you don't actually want to give it, like, you lose the tension, you also lose interest in that perspective. And so that's really, really what's dragging this down for me, is that element. I think the other thing that's happening in this is that he's relying maybe a little too much on things he did in the last book. Like, he's doing a lot of the same things. We're having these contests. We're having one-on-one brawls. We're having competitions and things like that. And that's where, I mean, those scenes are exciting, but it feels like just rehashing what he did in the first book. So I'm not loving that. And the other thing is, if you read book 1, think about where Vis ended up, or the condition he was in. In this book, there is a lot of ableism. And some of it, like, I'm willing to accept is coming from the society, but Vis himself is exhibiting a lot of internalized ableism, and I get that, like, it would be an adjustment. But I am just so sick of it. If I hear one more person think or say you can't succeed, and I get why, but it is just driving me up a wall. So this book is really, I'm struggling. I mean, it's fine when I read it, like, but like, I'm not enjoying it. And I keep telling myself I didn't love the first book either until the end. Like, it steadily grew. The first half I was like fine on, and then the second half I was like, ooh, this is pretty good, and then the ending blew me away. And so I keep telling myself, like, give yourself that time. But this really has me second guessing how good the first book was. The pipes in this apartment make so much noise. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it has me like second guessing how good the first book was. And the thing is, if this was the old me, I would put this aside and pick up one of my other books. But I have made myself only read one book at a time this year. It's a way of me like really absorbing myself in books and really finding that love for reading again, because I never stopped reading, but like I haven't really been loving it. And so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to give myself until halfway, which is like another 100 pages. Actually, I might, like another 100 pages. And there's a non-zero chance I DNF this. And I hate that. If this was an audiobook, I wouldn't have this problem, but the audiobook is Audible exclusive, and I'm not about to do that. So that's how I'm feeling. I wanted to update you just so you know that's how I'm feeling. And if it turns itself around, you will see me update at the end. If it doesn't turn itself around, I'll be back here in like 150 pages telling you why I DNF'd. But God, I hate that this is how I'm starting this video, and I really, really hate when I feel this way about a sequel. It took me like ages, but I have finally finished this, which is good. I didn't like it. The ending got me. You know what? I'll give him that. The ending got me. Kind of. I mean, there was a point where I saw it coming, but oh boy, how do I even talk about it? I mean, I think I've kind of covered it. I think the biggest flaw of this is the pacing, and it's worse than the first book was, like significantly worse. And it's the multi-perspective. So we have 3 perspectives. We have this. We're following him from the first book. That was the perspective I think I enjoyed the most. Not necessarily because the story was the best. I think all of the stories drag. But because his plot kind of follows on the first book the most. It's the characters we already know and love, some we hate. It's the world we have come to know, the cultures, the world building, all of that we've come to know. So it's the one that I was probably the most engaged in from the beginning. To be fair, from the beginning, I was very engaged in all three of them. The other one, Siaman, is the one that gets a lot of the information at the beginning, so I was really hooked by his. But then he has this, like, thing he is set out to do, and it just takes so long. And the thing is also, this is the second book in a trilogy. And this is not a thing I feel all the time when I read. It's pretty rare, and when it really bothers me. I was constantly aware that this was the second book in a trilogy, and things could not be resolved to this book. And Siaman's perspective is where that really was most evident for me. Like, this thing he is setting out to accomplish. I'm like, well, if he accomplishes it, theoretically, the conflict is resolved. So I knew from, like, the onset of when he was set on this, like, mission, this quest, I was like, it's either going to fail, he's going to succeed, but it doesn't do what he wants, or he's going to succeed and it's going to have worse consequences. You know, like, I was viscerally aware of that for his entire perspective. And then our third character, whose name I can't remember because for most of the story he is called by something that I think is an in-world word slur. Enough that I'm, like, uncomfortable using it. And his perspective, I'm not entirely sure why it mattered. Like, nothing was happening. It was so disconnected from everything else. And like I said, the balancing of these perspectives didn't work. Every time the perspective changed, I was disappointed. Every single time. For two reasons. One, because, like, it's the same reason. I was going to give it two reasons, but it's one. Islington builds up a perspective. You get into it, and then and every single perspective change ended with a cliffhanger, with some big moment. And after a while, it just was exhausting. So, I didn't like the plot. I think this was poorly paced. The world's interesting. However, you ever get that when you're disliking a book already, you start to think everything in the book is worse because you've already decided you dislike it. And I don't want to say I decided I dislike this. I was really so hopeful for this. I almost DNF'd. I should have DNF'd, honestly, because I'm less interested in the third book now. Like, I was really hoping that as a series I'd be really into it. At this point, though, I'm not really excited for book 3. But, yeah, so, like, there's the world we already knew, Catan, which is, like, very, you know, it's Roman inspired. And then we have these two other nations, places we get to know. One of them is very much Norse inspired, you know, big burly men with beards that fight in clans. That one was neat. And the other one is, I initially thought maybe Ottoman inspired, but later on I'm pretty sure it was Egyptian inspired, which I should have figured out sooner. And I was kind of bothered by the fact that that one is the most, like, overtly evil. I mean, a big theme of this is that, like, all of these places are corrupt, but that was the one that was most overtly evil. And there's something about having two white places and then the one brown inspired place being evil. Although, I'll give him credit, there was a really interesting, what I have to assume was intentionally an AI thing going on. It wasn't an AI, this is fantasy. But, like, something that was clearly making fun of AI or, like, pointing at AI or poking at it that I really liked there. So the world was fine. The characters are good. The characters continue to be good, and I do care about the characters. I just didn't care about their stories, which is rough, and the writing. So on top of what I have already addressed about, like, flow and things like that, the writing. I don't notice typos in books. I don't notice errors. I don't really tend to notice mistakes made in editing. I know it's been, like, a weird thing lately that people are like, I think publishers are pushing out books too fast and they're not being edited, and that's bad. And other than books getting longer than necessary, I haven't really noticed it. I noticed it in this one. There was one early on, and I don't remember the exact word, but, like, the wrong homophone was used. I think it was something like they went to fight and pillage and loot, and it was Lute instead of Loot, like the instrument instead of the act. And I don't think it was that phrase specifically or that word specifically, but it was something like that where the wrong homophone was used. I was like, all right, and I kind of ignored it and moved on. And then there were other instances. So I finally found one that I noticed and I bookmarked, where it's two characters talking, and his smile is tight at the unsaid remainder. That should be reminder. It says remainder. And, like, there's also places where, like, sentences are weird. Like, it feels like there was originally a long compound sentence that got split into two individual sentences, but there wasn't editing done, so there was, like, things like that. It's poorly edited, and I noticed that. That's concerning. Never noticed that before in my entire life. And this is, like, a traditionally published, really big release novel. And there are editing errors. That said, the other thing I will praise this for is the themes. There's a pretty strong theme throughout the entire book, of, like, what is good, what is right, where is the line, at what point is the things you have to do worth it, you know? Usually in terms of, like, small scale, like, when is it right to kill someone? But even large scale, like, how many people are you willing to kill, willing to sacrifice in order to save more people? How big does that second number have to be to justify how big that first number gets to be? That I really liked. And that was a pretty strong theme throughout the whole book. It built really nicely as the book went on, and that I really liked. A theme is not enough to get me through 700 pages of a book. By the end, I mean, it did pick up. Like, the pacing picked up. The last, like, 200 pages were a little bit better paced. I liked, like, the first 50 pages, and then it slowed down, and around, like, 300 pages, I was like, maybe I should DNF. The last 200 pages, it starts picking up, more exciting things are happening. But even so, by, like, the last 20 pages, I was still sitting there like, is this over yet? And there's some interesting reveals at the end. There is a lot of reveals I saw coming. None of it as gagged as the first book had me. Although there's some interesting stuff that goes on there. But it just, I haven't rated it yet. This is feeling like a 2.5. Like, I am upset that I finished this book. And genuinely don't know if I want to read the third one now. Like, I'm just not interested in where the story is going now. I'm not. So, that's that. I am not sure which one of these I want to start. This one I have an audiobook, and I kind of want to go with this so that I have, like, an audio, but that'll be more useful next week when I'm back to going to work, you know, so I have something during my commute. So on the weekend, maybe I'll read this. What I think I'm going to do is read something short, because I read Count of Monte Cristo and that back-to-back. So I'm going to find something short to read quick. And then if I finish it before the end of the weekend, I'll pick this up. If it's, actually, you know what? I'm going to do Local Heavens next. So I will get to you when I start that. Here's what I know about this so far. Very little. This is from Books and Lala, the person that had the most favorites in common with me. This was their favorite book. And I saw the cover and I was like, all right, sci-fi. Not always my thing, but this looks like soft sci-fi. Like, there's going to be robots, but it's basically chill. That is all that I knew. And then other people started reading it, and I saw other people reacting to it, and it's a Great Gatsby retelling. I don't love Great Gatsby. I read it in high school, and I didn't like it on its own merits, and then the guy I hate more than anything in high school loved it, and so I hated it even more. I've tried one or two Great Gatsby retellings since then, and I've been kind of meh on those two. This one is a sci-fi one. Oh, Filipino-American Nick Carraway. So I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going into this one with low expectations, and maybe that'll work out, because I went into that one with high expectations, and I was sorely disappointed. But, yeah, I think this will be the next book I pick up. I'm not far into Local Heaven by Cam Fajardo, I don't know. I've just finished chapter 6. I'm less than 100 pages in, but I think, and I might be a little premature doing this, but I think I'm gonna DNF. This isn't gonna do anything for me. I'm not a big sci-fi fan, and I'm not a Great Gatsby fan, so I just don't know what this is going to add. So far, this is pretty Great Gatsby. This is basically, we have, I mean, the characters' names aren't even changed. We have Nick Carraway, and he shows up on a space station, or planet, or whatever does it say. He's from New York City. Is it still New York City? West Egg, whatever. It's got the new money, old money thing, but it doesn't really quite make sense without the same historical context, quite frankly. Instead of bootlegging being about drinking, it's about mods, illegal modifications. But it's pretty one-to-one. There is, Nick Carraway has something else he's supposed to be doing, and I'm about to defend Great Gatsby, which is a wild thing. Great Gatsby, or Nick Carraway, isn't supposed to be the focus of the book. The fact that he is the narrator, simply an observer and not actually active, is kind of a big point of the book. So I don't love him as, like, having an active thing he's trying to accomplish. I don't know what it is, something to do with hacking, or I don't know. But it's just, so it's kind of combining Great Gatsby with, like, a sci-fi heist, and it's just not going to work for me. I know it's not. There's nothing wrong with this. Like, if those things sound cool to you, you will like this. It's well written. It is interesting. There's, like, weird multimedia type excerpts of, like, I don't even know what they are. Just, like, files or interviews. I'm not entirely sure what they're supposed to be. Yeah, a transcript. So there's, like, interesting things going on here. Gorgeous cover. It's just, I know that this is not going to be for me, which is unfortunate. I'm not going to get up because I'm really comfortable right now. But I guess I will start Interior Chinatown. That was, I'll get it. I will stop being lazy. So, Interior Chinatown was Katie Coulson's favorite book. We had, I think, six of her favorites were also books I had read and loved at some point. So reading her favorite of the year, or I don't know if hers was actually in order, it's the last one she mentioned in her video, seems like the next thing to do. That said, I do feel like she liked The Strength of the Few considerably more than me, so I don't know. This is, I'm not even sure I remember. I do remember when she described it being very interested. My heating just kicked on, sorry about that. In what it is. Oh, right, this is about, like, a man, it's about this guy who wants to move up the ranks, like, as an Asian man in film. There are only, like, so many roles you can have, and right now he's just generic background Asian man, and he wants to work up to, like, Kung Fu Asian man or something, like, I don't know. And that is kind of the point, but there's something more going on, and I don't know. Procedural cop show. Yeah, I don't know what else is going on, but I know it sounded really interesting, and it sounds very different, so I am going to get started on this. It seems like it's going to be a quick read, so I might even give you an update later today. Okay, I'm about 80 pages into Interior Chinatown, which is about 30%. I can tell you right now, I don't think this is going to be a 5-star for me. If I had to guess, this is going to be 3 to 4, depending on where it goes. But it's an easy read, and I think I'll enjoy the time that I read it. So like I said, this is about Willis. He is currently generic Asian man, number 3. And it's his aspiration to be Kung Fu guy, which is the highest esteem people, the Asian people that live in Chinatown can aspire to. And this is, I'm waiting for the theme, the messaging to get a little deeper than that, because it's kind of sticking there at the surface level of what you think that is, which is that, like, people of a certain race, you know, are shoehorned into things. They are flattened. Their lived experiences are ignored. And so far, that's really all this is doing, and it's just kind of doing it over and over again in slightly different ways. He works on a show. I think it's a show. Sometimes it gets a little weird in a way that I'm like, I can't quite tell. But a show called Black and White, which is a black male detective and a white woman detective that work together. And there is some interesting stuff there going on with stereotyping as well. Like, this black cop is aggressive and big, and they're playing into that. They're even playing into a little bit of the white woman. Oh, she's so gentle. And I do like that we are getting that, but like, I need it to go a little deeper than that. I need it to be more than just like, isn't it weird how we in society act like Asian people can only be like 3 things? I need it to be more than that. So we'll see. But I probably won't update you till I'm finished, because I don't think I'm going to have a lot to say about this. It's a little late getting to work today, so I hope you don't mind me getting ready for the day. Wow, I talked to you. Later than usual, still early. Last night, I finished Interior Chinatown. Pull off my desk. It was good. It ended up better. It ended up much better than it had started. I still think, ooh, you guys are real low. I still think like the themes maybe didn't need a whole novel to explore, but in the second half we get kind of more of a plot, and also like that line between is this a show versus is it reality got a little clearer, which is, it is reality, but like through the lens of a TV show. And once the plot got there a little bit more, I started liking it more. I think it kind of expanded beyond just this very obvious stereotyping theme and kind of really got to the heart of some things. There's towards the end, you know that scene in the Barbie movie where America Ferrera, is that her name? Gives like a speech that's just like, here is the theme about, women are expected to be this, and this has a scene like that. But I liked it a lot more in this than I did in the Barbie movie. Maybe because it's a theme that, like, just in general is one I needed to hear more, or maybe it's because I liked the way it was done more in context. I don't know. But it has a scene like that where it's kind of spelling out the theme for you. And I like it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I think it's really good. And I do think people should read this. I think this is really good. It's also a show on HBO. I don't know. HBO? No. Hulu. Maybe I'll watch it. I'm not sure. But regardless, I think this is good and worth reading. Not quite a 5 stars. It's a 4-star. Barely a 4-star, but a 4-star. I thought it was good. Like I said, I just think, I don't know. It took too long to get to where I started to really enjoy it for more than just, wow, this is saying something important. So then I am going to pick up the next book, or I already have, which is the actual number 1 from my YouTube following, people I follow on YouTube. So Strength of the Few was number 2. This is number 1. And I'm hesitantly optimistic about this. I struggle with fantasy a little bit lately, getting into a new world, but I think this is going to work for my brain, and that is The Raven Scholar. And I should check. I'm not sure how far I am because I was listening to the audiobook on my way to work this morning. So give me just a second to figure out exactly where I am. Somewhere around here. So I'm like 60-ish pages in, so I'm really just at like first impressions. But I am kind of liking this. So this opens, so the world we're in, kind of the premise here is that 7 times the Guardians have saved Aura. The next time they return, they will destroy it. So we have 8 Guardians that are kind of in pairs. I have these tabs to kind of help me remember certain things. So we have 8. It's Fox, Raven, Tiger, Ox, Bear, Monkey, Hound, and Dragon. And it have all saved that. And then everybody in the world kind of pledges, or I don't know if it's everyone. Maybe not everyone. Maybe there are ordinary people that don't do it. But pledges themselves to a god. And at the start of this, we open with these twins, whose names I can't remember, who are just turning 16. But when they were 8, their father attempted a coup, attempted to kill the emperor, was stopped, caught, and executed in turn. And now these kids are 16, which is kind of the time where you decide which god to pledge yourself to, you know. Very Divergent-esque. You typically follow in the footsteps of your parents, but not always. So, like, their parents were, I think, their mom is a dragon. I don't know what their dad is. I assume the same. Maybe a tiger? I don't know. And so they're at that moment. And then we skip from there a little bit because they end up separated. Some drama goes down. And then we turn to the titular Raven Scholar, which is like Naylor. I don't know. And she has to write the, when you have to leave exile order for one of these twins because of what happened when they were at this moment. And after that, she kind of rises through the ranks. Then we skip another 8 years forward where we are at this moment where the emperor is planning to step down and there is a big contest for who will take his place. One person from each of these 8 factions will send someone. I think it's really interesting. The exile in this is interesting because it's more of a shunning where you are like, nobody talks about you, but it's like you never even existed. Like, so it's really interesting because there's a lot of exploration, at least where I'm at, of like that grief and thing where you can't even like talk about this thing, or like our main character is feeling a lot of guilt over signing this order. But she can't like talk to anyone about it because she has to pretend this person never existed. So that's really interesting. I have heard the world building of this is hard to kind of grasp, or that it's like drip fed to you, but like, I don't know. And this is going to sound like I'm saying it's generic, and I'm not, but like this world isn't difficult to like get. I mean, I don't know what everybody's powers are, but like these animal sort of roles are very common. Like Echo Archives, what is it? Last Hour Between Worlds and The Last Soul Among Wolves. Like that world has like animal magic based factions, and so it's not hard to like quite get a grasp on what these are. Like foxes, spies, and assassins. Ravens are like scribes and lawyers. You have bears are warriors, but they're more, I think, going to be like berserker type barbarians. You know, you have tigers are also warriors. Wolves are like guards and cops. Like it's not, or hounds, sorry, not wolves. So it's like, I feel like this is pretty intuitive, but maybe there's more coming that's more complicated. We do have these things with the 7 times the gods have showed up to save the world. I am getting this. This is not in any way said in the text. If it comes up later, this was entirely me. Save feels like it might not be as kind a word as you might assume. Like to me, that sounds like maybe when they show up, things go poorly. I don't know. And then the eighth time, I think it's going to be the dragon that shows up and then ends up destroying the world. That kind of seems to be what's going on. So I assume every of the other 7 times have been different gods. I don't know. But also our main character doesn't believe in the gods, which is very fascinating. I think the idea of being an atheist in a world where gods have inherently touched the world is so fascinating. And I don't know how long it's been since the last time one of these gods has saved the world. So, you know, there could be a reason for that. Like, I think it's so fascinating. So I'm really hoping that gets explored. There's a character in Stormlight Archive like that, and I think it's really interesting how it's explored, which is, if I'm remembering correctly, less I don't believe these things exist, and more I just don't think they are as powerful and all-knowing as we assume they are. I don't know. I am hesitantly optimistic about this one. I did kind of lose interest a little bit when we switched perspectives because I was really into what was going on with the twins, but I think I'll get back into it. And I'm enjoying it. So I have high hopes for this, but if it doesn't work out, I do have quite a long list. There is one, I'm going to address this real quickly because I do want to say this for the record, that if based on the Books and Lala Besties spreadsheet, of everybody that had any book in common with me, the one that came up the most common in their lists was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I would read that for this video if I ever get my hands on it. I'm not going to buy it because I didn't really love her other book, the one about the wolves, Win Among Wolves. That doesn't sound right. I didn't love that one. So I'm not like super gung-ho about reading this one, but I have a hold on at the library. I have the audiobook on hold on Libby. If it comes through before I get another 5-star, it will be the next one I read, but we'll see. And I will tell you the other ones on here if I start reading them. I will tell you one I'm reading soon because it's my book club pick. One I already have from the library, so I'd like to read that one, even if it's not for this video. And another one I own, so I should get to that pretty soon. But we will see how the Raven Scholar goes first. I literally need to go downstairs like right now and like get started with the day. However, quickly, I forgot to mention there's a chameleon, or allegedly, we haven't seen it yet, but we've heard about it. I'm pretty anti-exotic pets for a myriad of reasons. I think you can't really take care of them the way they need to be taken care of. There's a lot of weird exploitation in the like smuggling of exotic animals, and lots of people let them into the wild, which means they either just die or end up becoming invasive species. So I'm anti-exotic pets. But if I wasn't, the one exotic pet I would have is a chameleon. I just love their freaky little toes and their silly little tails, and I think they're incredible. So I really hope we get this chameleon because I'm obsessed. His name is Pink Pink because his favorite color is pink. I love him. If nothing else, I will read for Pink Pink. All right, I'm about halfway through the Raven Scholar. I'm going to put this down so if anybody coming to work or school doesn't think I'm crazy. This is good. I'm really enjoying it. I think it just does everything really well. Like, let me get rid of my gum. Like, the world building isn't insane. A lot of the fantasy elements are things I've seen done before, but it's doing it exceptionally well. It is a really well executed version of something I have seen before. And I will take that. I love that in fantasy. I think so often in fantasy, authors seem to think they need to reinvent the wheel. I kind of think this is the Sanderson effect, where like having a unique magic system and a really interesting world is all that matters. But I'm fine with a magic system that I've seen before. I'm fine with world building and religion that I have seen before if you really execute it. And Hodgson is doing that. She's really executing everything so well. Plot-wise, it's mainly this mystery. The synopsis tells you about this. I think it's kind of far in the book. It's like not till like 150, 200 pages in that everything in the synopsis happens. To be fair, that's still like less than a quarter of the book. But to me, it feels a little foreign. But the main plot here is that somebody that has come to this contest has died. So there was an empress many years ago, the Dragon Empress, whatever, who put in place these 5 rules. And a big part of it is that nobody can rule for more than 24 years. And at that point, they have to hold a contest for who can become the next king, the next emperor, the next queen. Because the right to rule should not be born in the blood. I think there's a fascinating metaphor going on here about, maybe trying to find a different system that doesn't rely on heredity and thinking, therefore, it's incorruptible, but it's still, you can still mess with it. I'm gonna leave that thought there. But, so the main thing is this mystery. Somebody gets murdered, and Nima, our titular Raven Scholar, has to solve this murder. So the main plot is this mystery. Not a huge mystery fan. I've tried many of them, and very few of them work for me. But what generally works for me in a mystery is if I care about the detective, and if the mystery in some way is at least a little personal to the detective, right? So like the reason the Evander Mills series works for me so well is that I really care about Andy. And then all of those mysteries are inherently personal to him because it has to deal with the queer community. And in the plot of the mystery, we are getting character development for Andy, And this is doing something very similar where I really care about Nima. I think she's fascinating. I really like her as a person. And therefore, I want to see her succeed. And also, this mystery is personal to her. She's one of the possible people, one of the suspects here. So she really needs to solve it. But also, the plot doesn't get mired down in the mystery because we have this contest going on in the background. And there's political machinations going on. And also, the mystery is not hiding anything. I think that's so... I get so frustrated with a mystery that feels like I'm being lied to, or that I feel like how could I have known that, When I get the reveal at the end and it's like, I couldn't have possibly come up with that, right? So I think Hodgson is doing an incredible job to the point where I kind of want to try one of her mysteries of making me feel like I'm getting the information that I need when I need it. Like, when we get new information, it doesn't feel like the old information didn't matter. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that well. So the mystery itself is still very engaging to me, but also we get these contests, and those are fun. And we haven't gotten nearly as many of them as I would have liked. We got like we're only on the second contest of 8. So I would like more of that. And then we have characters, and they're all so interesting. Everyone. We have Elisa, the mother of the girl that was exiled at the beginning. We have her brother that made the decision to have her exiled. We have this person that everybody describes as a childhood friend of Nima. It is her ex. Like, her young adulthood boyfriend they had a horrible breakup. Like, that dynamic is really interesting. The Emperor himself is a fascinating character. So all of it, to me, is so interesting. And it's really coming together to make this really good story. And the perspective, we have mostly we're in Nima's head, but occasionally we'll get like hints of something somebody else is thinking. Or there's this other perspective that I won't spoil for you, but that's really fun and that I really enjoy. So all of that is just really, really good. And this is doing a thing that I didn't think it was going to do. It's similar to the Dandelion Dynasty does this in a way I really like, where we have, I don't want to say that, never mind. There is an element I personally really like and I don't see done often enough. And then I'm doing tandem reading. I'm doing the audiobook and the physical, which is why I'm updating you in my car after I got to work, because I had the audiobook on. The audiobook is very good. This is a narrator I might look up and try more of their things. This is be like the 3rd narrator. Would reading books read by my favorite narrators vlog be fun to anybody other than me? I might do that just because there are some narrators I really like and I should explore more from. But she, and I don't know her name right now, I will look it up and say it in a later clip if I remember, but she's doing a really, really good job. I am really enjoying it. There are elements of the occasional, like, we'll get a cough or a sigh or a giggle, but not so often that it's distracting. Like, it is really there to enhance the narrative. She does some great voices that really convey a character really well, like in a way that is, I think, enhancing the book more than I would have if I had just read it with my eyes. Like, the way she voices characters is really adding to the story. So I'm having a really great time with this. This weekend, I'm going on my little brother's bachelor trip, so we are going to be in Kentucky. I don't know if I'll have time to update you. I also don't know if I will finish this book like I should in the time given. Normally, I would say I'll finish this weekend, but I don't know how much time I'm going to have to read. So my next update will either be in Kentucky and I have finished it and I've snuck away to talk, or I don't know, but I'm excited because I'm really liking this. Actually, that angle's all right. It's going to have to be good enough because I just put dinner in the oven, so I only have 15 minutes to talk. I finally finished The Raven Scholar. This actually took me a while to finish because this weekend, it was a 4-day weekend, which in theory means a lot of reading, but actually it was my little brother's bachelor party, and we went to Kentucky, Bardstown specifically. Let me tell you, if you're going to Kentucky, whether you're going for bourbon or another reason, Bardstown, great area. Perfect area for bourbon. It's the bourbon capital of the world. If you are there, there's a Taste of Bardstown, which is a market there, but they do tours. They do food tours, and they also do beer and bourbon tours. I did the food tour with my family. Incredible time. Absolutely wonderful time. Cannot recommend it enough. I might even leave a link down below. I don't get anything from that, but like, genuinely one of the best experiences I've ever had on a trip. Like, fantastic time. Don't know if I can recommend the bourbon and beer and bourbon tour just because of where I was at the end of the food tour, but incredible time. Had a fun time. However, between everything, the family time and the bourbon and the fun and the activities and the bourbon and the board games, I didn't have a lot of time for reading. So I didn't really get through this as quickly or as fast as I would have liked. However, on the way home, I had plenty of time. You know, it was a 9-hour drive. Everybody else was sleeping because we had left kind of early. I could have finished this book then. And I didn't want to. I found myself, I'd listen to 1 or 2 chapters and then put it down for an hour or 2 because I just didn't want it to be over. And then I got home last night and I could have finished. I only had 60 pages left. I could have finished it, but I didn't want to. And then I started reading it this morning and I could not wait to get through it. I needed to know everything. This is an incredible book and definitely a 5-star. Like, easy 5-star. I was so into this book the entire time. I was gonna make myself a bourbon drink in honor of this past weekend, but quite frankly, I think I've had enough bourbon. So this is apple cider and spiced rum. Delicious. Highly recommend it. Okay. So what did I love? Everything. I don't even know like how to talk about how much I like it. I hate that when I hate a book, I can be like, this is every tiny detail that I hated. But when I love a book, it's so hard. I think this was perfectly paced. It was never too slow. I didn't find myself mired down waiting for the next thing to happen. But it never went like breakneck. The end got a little crazy, but like that's what you want in a book. The world is revealed slowly and beautifully. Again, not the most complicated world building. Like on my graph, I give it a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 because it's not the most like unique or complicated thing, but it's done very well. The characters are delightful and are revealed slowly to us. The interconnected relationships between them are so complicated and beautiful. And the twist at the end, oh God, there's so much I want to talk about. There's one thing in particular I want to talk about like so bad because I have this theory, I have this idea in my head, and I'm like, how do I say that without revealing some information? But all of that, the end of this, you just get like twist after reveal, and it's so well done, so incredibly done. I just, every bit of it, this was fantastic. And just like one of the things I was thinking about, I'll be right back. So one of the things I complained about with The Strength of the Few was that throughout the whole thing, I couldn't really forget that I was reading a book, and I was constantly thinking about how it was going to end, how it could end, things like that. Whereas with this, I wasn't. Until I got very close to the end and I was like, oh, I'm almost done. I need to start thinking of things I'm going to say when I finish this. And I was thinking about how this book has limited ways it can end, right? We have 8 contenders for the throne, really 7 because the dragon contender doesn't really compete. And even out of that 7, as a reader, you know only some of them are actually possibilities, you know, because of storytelling, right? So I'm going into this and I know there's limited options for who can take this throne, who's going to become the emperor. And I even know to some extent, if this person wins, this is probably what's going to happen to spur this on to the next book. But I wasn't actively thinking about that at any point while I was reading. I thought about it towards the end when I was like, okay, what am I going to say about this? But it wasn't something I was thinking about. Whereas with this, knowing that this is part of a series, knowing that it's only book 2 of 3, I couldn't stop thinking about that. And I was really wondering why. And then I thought about, if you have not listened to the podcast Wheel Takes, unlikely given the few people who actually watch my videos, Allie and Gus did Wheel of Time breakdown shows, and they talk about it from the like perspective of screenwriters, people involved in the industry, actors, that kind of thing. And a big part of the things that they hype, big thing that Allie really talked about was the question. Every episode has a question. Every season has a question. In theory, the show overall has a question. And it's very important that you don't answer that question too soon, because then you lose audience engagement. And I think the problem here was, what was the question? Because the question for The Strength of the Few is, how are we going to save the world? How are we going to stop the cataclysm? Is that what it's called? It's not any. Oh yeah, the cataclysm. How do we stop the cataclysm? How do we save the world? And the answer for book 2 in a series is we don't. And like, it doesn't really matter how we don't or why we don't, although that can be very interesting in like knowing you fail and wondering how you fail or why you fail. But at the end of the day, in book 2, you know the answer is they don't. And I think that's part of why I was so not engaged with this one. Whereas in here, the question is, who becomes emperor? And we don't know the answer. I can speculate. I know there's limited options, but I don't actually know what the answer is. And I think that's why, even though in theory, if I meta thought about it, I could have figured it out. It's the same thing with like the actual mystery in here, which is not that big of a part of this. It's kind of a very small part, the who killed, what's her name? Kind of a small part of this, but it is there. And fascinating answers to get there too. But that I think is why, because you don't get that answer. And by the time you get the answer, you're close enough to the end where it's like, okay, but what happens next, you know? And I do think that's probably why. I think that, not necessarily why, but I think that's the difference in the storytelling here, is the question they are asking, and this only had one answer. At least that's my thought. I don't know. I love this. Fantastic. Actually worth the hype. Last year, my favorite from the video, was that my favorite? I don't actually remember my favorite from last video, but one of my favorites from last video was Will of the Many, or Will of the Many, and now I'm terrified with how bad Strength of the Few is that that's going to be my curse, so I'm really hoping when, what is it called? The Fox? Something about the Fox. The Fox in Winter. I really, really hope that that does not let me down the same way the Strength of the Few did, or I might just give up on fantasy series. Genuinely. Some other books, just really quickly, if you're still here, that I could have read for this series. If I had read the one that was most popular among people that had favorites in common with me from the Books and Lala Besties spreadsheet, it would have been, what is the name of that book? The Charlotte McConaughey one. I didn't really want to read that one, so I'm glad I didn't. Some of the other ones, Night of the Moth, kind of interested in this one. Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang is a name that makes me uncomfortable to say. But anyway, excited for this one. Glad I have it out from the library. We'll probably still get to it kind of soon. When the Wolf Comes Home, I own this one. That probably would have been pretty quick on my list to read next if the Raven Scholar hadn't done it for me. Because I own it, so it'd be nice to read this sooner rather than later. And I'm glad it's a shorter book, because Barry, kind of disappointing for me. And the other one that was pretty high up there was The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I'm actually reading that one right now because it's for my book club. Was there anything else? There was another one I wasn't going to read. The second one in the mystery fantasy series with the mushrooms and things. I didn't like the first one, so I wasn't going to read the second one. There are probably a couple more. I have my laptop here. I can look at it real quick if you care. But overall, this went okay. I'm glad I read Interior Chinatown, which I probably wouldn't have done if not for this video. And I might not have gotten to the Raven Scholar that quickly because I've really been avoiding any time there's an unfinished video, unfinished series. So I'm glad I read that. Oh, Catabasis was the next one, which would have been fun because it's got a lot of divisive opinions on it. I will get to that one eventually, but probably not too soon. But that's just kind of what I've read, and I am so happy to have read this and finally gotten a 5-star this year. It's rough halfway through February to not have loved anything I've read, so I'm happy I got to this one. I hope you have had a wonderful beginning of the year. Please drop below what your favorites of 2025 were. Maybe I'll do a follow-up. Probably not. We'll see. My next vlog that is planned right now is a reading like it's 2026 vlog. I'm hoping not too many people have already done that by the time I've done it. I've seen a lot of recommendations for that, but not actual readings. So that's my plan. Like the video if you like it, share it around, leave a comment, all of those things. Subscribe if you aren't already. And that's going to be it for me. Love you. Bye.